Okay, we're talking about the Buzzcut and the Hunter Killer, which are pretty much identical. So throughout this entire video, if I ever fixate on any one of these weapons, rest assured they are identical. So if you aren't aware of how scavenger weapons work in Fortnite Save the World, they are effectively a cheaper, more ammo-efficient version of their counterpart. So the Hunter Killer is that main game, regular tap-fire AR that a lot of you might be picturing, but the Buzzcut is the, well, as I just said, identical counterpart. It's meant to be cheaper, and that's pretty much the only difference. So when I compare the stats here, you can see that they have less durability on the Buzzcut side, and it's cheaper to craft. So that is more ammo efficient, but otherwise completely identical damage, reload, mag size, everything in every single way. And you can even see this when they're all the way maxed out and leveled up. I can show you this one right here, which is a typical slowed and snared, crit build just like so, and its DPS, before I actually pull up the stats, will be identical to its counterpart, and they are the same in every single way. So the Hunter Killer and Buzzcut is one of those weapons that I always really enjoyed using. It was one of the first purple schematics I got, which was actually good for me at the time. You know, when you're just starting out and you're just getting your first schematics, this is one of my very first decent weapons, and there is a Founders version of this, which was given to me. Thank you so much, Sky, but, that Storm Shield glitch took it from my inventory, so I wasn't actually able to demonstrate it, but rest assured it was basically just an epic version of this exact same schematic, and it was just called Founders Raptor instead of the Hunter Killer. So the Founders version actually has the exact same stats to the Raptor. The only difference being is that Founders weapons actually have a 6 perk without needing to be a legendary schematic, but they are also limited to epic. Now, as for actually using this weapon, it's a tap-fire ranged AR that has pretty decent range, pretty decent accuracy. It feels very, very good to use, but I honestly don't know what to say about this weapon. I've re-recorded this video like 3 times now because the truth of it is that it's really just not that strong. So if this weapon has boosted damage in the future and it's doing more than you're seeing here, then I think this would actually be a really good pick. I think semi-auto weapons are overshadowed by a lot of the fully auto weapons because, well, let me just show you the numbers. The Hunter Killer is right here with 106,000 DPS, perked identically to my Siegebreaker. It has 4,000 range, 30 mag size, everything. But the Siegebreaker does more damage in general. It can shoot faster, even if you are tapping as fast as you can possibly go. A fully auto weapon does everything at the same range, and it's just easier to use in general. A lot of people will argue something that I do agree with, and that's the fact that because the Hunter Killer is doing more damage per bullet, you might not have to use as much ammo to kill enemies, and for that, it's very, very true. And these changes are very negligible, meaning it's 119,000 DPS, at least in my personal inventory here with the loadout that I have, compared to 106,000, which is very, very close, meaning if you're using a Hunter Killer or the Raptor, which is the purple variant, and you're in Stonewood, Plankerton, even Canny, this is going to be completely fine. Even halfway through Twine, it's really not going to matter. Until you get into those 100 zones, you really shouldn't be too worried about using the Hunter Killer, especially if a semi-auto is something you enjoy. I absolutely recommend using it because this is not a bad weapon, it's simply just overshadowed by some of the others, and that's kind of the experience that I had. I brought this into a 140 zone, I was taking out encampments, I was having no problems at all. I don't think I ever died. Thank you so much, Coconuts, by the way. But all in all, as long as you are willing to click your mouse as fast as possible, sorry, console players, you're probably going to be just fine. But like I said, I was doing way, way more work than usual to do the amount of damage that a Siegebreaker or literally any other stronger AR or SMG in the game would have done just fully automatically. So I will recommend the Hunter Killer to those who enjoy semi-auto weapons and to those who are in the lower zones. But without further ado, let's get into the best perks for this thing because I think it's pretty interesting. So now going to my Buzzcut schematic, because it's the only one I have leveled up. So right off the bat, let's get the boring one out of the way. So reload, crit rate, and crit damage is something I highly recommend because this thing actually has a base 15% crit chance instead of the usual 10, and it does a base 75% damage instead of the usual 50. So you will be hitting harder crits more often with this weapon, which means it's pretty good to run crit build on this. I don't really think there's any other reason you shouldn't besides the fun build that I wanted to get into, and that is that I tried a fire rate headshot build. Thank you so much to Platinum for dropping me a copy of this because he and Sky each dropped me many copies of the Buzzcut and the Hunter Killer so I could show you guys some different perks, and with the fire rate headshot build, I wanted to love this. This is the fun build that I wanted to recommend. I didn't want to go usual crit build on this. I wanted to find a fun way to use this, but unfortunately, the impact on this weapon was such that it was like shooting a bobblehead. In most of my experience trying to hit headshots with this thing, they basically just moved around crazily, and I have pretty okay accuracy. I trust my aim. I was feeling pretty good today. I was on my game, but when you can't hit a headshot, you're not really getting that bonus, and if you ever have to hit a body shot, that 40% damage bonus to the head is completely lost. So if you have insane accuracy and you want to trust your bullets, then I think fire rate and damage is a fun way to go, but as I said in the beginning, I don't see any reason not to go boring crit build on this, and that's because the Buzzcut and the Hunter Killer are some of the earliest weapons in the game game. There isn't a lot of perk variability. These weapons aren't extremely unique. They're very normal, and a very normal perk loadout is exactly just. I went energy on this with Buzzcut. So did they. I was given fire copies because nature missions are extremely common as of recording. This won't be true in the future. Energy is best all around. I'll link my elements guide below if you guys want to check that out. And the 6th perk is where we have some interesting topics. So Affliction is my personal favorite. Soul and Snare is what we had on most of these copies. And I was just running around normal mission, you know, just shooting zombies for you guys. But if you're using this in your defenses and you're using floor spikes, for example, Soul and Snare will be really, really great at tapping individual enemies because you can control that rate of fire. Just tap one bullet, slow an enemy down, and then it'll stack with the floor spikes. Tic Tac did a great breakdown right here. And I think that video is still accurate, so you can check him out. He explains it way better than I will here. But my point is, Slowed and Snared can be good for those circumstances, but this is a weapon that's a tap fire, and you're going to be taking on a lot of enemies at once, and you're going to have to be controlling your accuracy a lot. So Affliction can tick away a lot of extra damage while you're not shooting at those enemies. As I'm recording this, that Affliction damage isn't doing a ton, but it is there, and it is meaningful if they're very low. So it's something that I was personally, like, really missing in the middle of my fights, and the fact that I was constantly thinking about it leads me to believe that it probably would have been a little bit of help there. And of course, as per usual, if you have Affliction or Slowed and Snared, you want to match that 6th perk. But the interesting part is the headshot bonuses. So you can get the 5 headshots up your range damage by 30%, which isn't a ton, but if you're spamming headshots on enemies, you're probably going to kick in that bonus pretty quickly. And of course, if you have headshot eliminations cause an explosion, that'll be really, really nice for group damage, so you can be a lot more effective in encampments and in crowds of enemies. And it'll allow you to free up your 5th perk for like damage to miss monsters, which are going to need more bullets, which you can hit a lot more headshots on, or damage to stun staggered. I don't think you're going to be hitting many enemies to stun them or stagger them, so I think damage to miss monsters is probably your best way to go. And I'm really happy to be recommending this because most weapons, if you don't have Affliction or Slowed and Snared, you're losing out on effectively 45% damage, and you just should kind of scrap the schematic. But for these weapons, you have an opportunity there because if you're going to be aiming for headshots anyway, it brings back that other perk load that I mentioned earlier, fire rate headshot or damage headshot. The fire rate is already very good on this weapon. You don't need a fire rate perk, but holy cow, can you knock off shots very, very quickly if you run it that way. You can go for that. If your 6th perk isn't Affliction or Slowed and Snared, then fire rate or damage / headshot build is kind of a nice compromise, but you can still go crit rating, crit damage on this build no matter what the 6th perk is, although I'd highly recommend if you're trying to maximize your damage, you go Afflicted on this, but as I mentioned, Slowed and Snared has a place. And then of course for the reload perk, I highly recommend a reload perk on this. You're not going to need mag size, it's not going to be a big deal, and that extra damage could be okay. The reload's not terrible on this weapon, so you might want to maximize your damage per bullet, especially since it's a semi-auto weapon. You're going to be working for those shots, but I'm a fan of reloads, so I like to use that, but I think damage is definitely not a bad option here. But that just about wraps it up. Buzzcut Hunter Killer. It's a fun weapon set. I hope these weapons get buffed in the future. If they get any stronger, I'll pin a comment below. If these perks are outdated, I'll pin a comment. Those don't mean the same thing, so if they buff the damage, then just every perk I mentioned here is just better now. But I'd highly recommend using something else if you're in like the highest levels of Twine and you're trying to maximize your damage, because these won't be it. So yeah, that's the Hunter Killer and Buzzcut. If you guys want to support the channel, feel free to use code Mista to check out. Like the video if you liked it, dislike if you disliked it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a nice day. And then